On July 26, 1986, siblings Emma, 9, Ben, 7, and Lily Morgan, 4, vanished from Silver Beach, a popular stretch of coastline near the sleepy coastal town of Bayshore, Oregon. The children took a 10-minute bike ride from their suburban home to the beach, a journey they had made several times that summer without incident. They never returned. Detective Marcus Reed stared at the 3 school photos arranged on his desk, the smiling faces of the Morgan children seeming to follow him as he paced the small confines of the Bayshore Police Department. The summer heat pressed against the windows, unrelenting, much like the pressure building on his shoulders with each passing hour. 36 hours, he muttered, rubbing his temples. 36 hours and not a single solid lead. The door to his office creaked open. Sarah Palmer, his partner of 5 years, stepped in with fresh coffee and a grim expression that matched his own. "Parents still at home?" Reed asked, accepting the steaming cup. Sarah nodded, her red hair falling across her tired eyes. "Mrs. Morgan hasn't slept. Mr. Morgan keeps retracing the bike route every few hours. It's like he believes if he tries one more time, they'll magically appear." Reed understood the impulse. The Morgan case had quickly become personal for everyone in the department. Bayshore was a town where people left their doors unlocked and children played unsupervised until street lights flickered on. 3 missing children had shattered that illusion of safety overnight. "Run me through the timeline again," Reed said, even though he had memorized every detail. Sarah flipped open her notebook. The children left home at approximately 10:15 a.m. Mrs. Morgan says Emma asked to take Ben and Lily to Silver Beach. They had $5 for ice cream at the Palmer's Beach Shack. They were expected home for lunch at 12:30. At 1:45, after trying to reach them through neighbors and friends, Mrs. Morgan called us. The witness statements had been frustratingly inconsistent. Old Mr. Peterson, who lived in the blue house with the wraparound porch 3 blocks from the beach, claimed he saw the Morgan children pedaling past his home at around 10:30, laughing and racing each other. The time frame matched what Mrs. Morgan had told them. Janice Williams, the librarian who spent her Saturdays reading on a bench overlooking the beach, remembered seeing 3 children matching the Morgans' description building a sandcastle around 11 a.m. They seemed happy, she had told Reed. Nothing out of the ordinary. But it was Howard Lane's statement that kept Reed awake at night. Lane, a tourist from Seattle, had been photographing seagulls near the rocky outcropping that marked the north end of Silver Beach. When reviewing his photographs the evening after the disappearance, he discovered he had inadvertently captured a distant image of 3 children who could be the Morgans. In the grainy enlargement, they appeared to be talking to a tall man with light-colored hair. "We need to find that man," Reed said, tapping the photograph that now lay at the center of his corkboard. "If he exists," Sarah cautioned. "The photo's blurry, and Lane isn't certain of the exact time it was taken. The metadata on the digital file was corrupted." Reed nodded, but his instincts told him the man in the photograph was significant. "What about the ice cream vendor?" Palmer said the children were regulars. Jack Palmer confirms they arrived at his stand around 11:20. He remembers Emma buying 3 vanilla cones. He specifically remembered Lily dropping hers almost immediately and crying until Emma shared what was left of hers. "And that's the last confirmed sighting," Reed sighed. The children's bicycles had been found neatly parked beside the ice cream stand, which wasn't unusual. Many beachgoers left their bikes there while enjoying the shore. The search had been extensive. Coast Guard vessels patrolled the waters while helicopters scanned the coastline. Search parties combed the woods backing the beach and the caves that dotted the shore during low tide. Dive teams explored the deeper waters, though there had been no indication of a swimming accident. The weather had been clear, the seas calm. As darkness fell on the second day, Reed drove back to Silver Beach alone. The search teams had reluctantly disbanded until morning, but he couldn't bring himself to go home to his empty apartment. The moon cast a silver path across the water as he walked the length of the beach, the sand still warm beneath his feet. Something about this case tugged at his memory, a half-forgotten detail that stayed just beyond his reach. He had worked in law enforcement for 15 years, 10 of those as a detective, and he had developed an uncanny ability to sense when details didn't align. His phone buzzed. Sarah had sent him a message, TV station running the story again at 10. Hoping for new leads. The media coverage had been intense. 3 photogenic children missing from a peaceful town made for compelling headlines. Reed hoped the exposure would generate leads, but so far, it had mostly produced false sightings and theories ranging from the plausible to the absurd. Back at the station the next morning, Reed reviewed a stack of reports from the overnight tip line. Most could be immediately dismissed, but one caught his attention. A night clerk at the Seaside Motel, 20 miles north of Bayshore, reported seeing a man with 3 sleepy children checking in late on the evening of the disappearance. The clerk described the man as tall with sandy blonde hair, possibly in his mid-30s. "Sarah, get a team to the Seaside Motel," Reed ordered, already grabbing his jacket. "And contact the Morgans. We need recent photos for identification." The motel was a single-story building facing the highway, its weathered sign missing several bulbs. The manager, a heavy-set man named Ray Collier, met them in the office, nervous but eager to help. "Room 14, he said, leading them down the cracked concrete walkway. "Checked out Monday morning around 6. Paid cash for 2 nights but only stayed 1. "Security cameras?" Sarah asked. "Ain't worked in years," Collier admitted. "Just for show, you know. Deterrent." The room had been cleaned, but forensics might still find something useful. Reed ordered it sealed and called for a team. "Did you get a name?" "CID." Reed pressed the manager. "Called himself John Smith." Collier shrugged apologetically. "Didn't ask for ID since he paid up front. Cash customers, you know, sometimes they prefer privacy." "And the children?" "Stayed in the car at first. When he came back with the key, he helped them inside. They looked tired, not upset or nothing. I figured they was his kids, coming back late from a day trip." "Did they say anything? Did you hear names?" Sarah asked. Collier thought for a moment. "The older girl called the little one Lily, I think. That stuck, 'cause my sister's named Lily." Reed and Sarah exchanged glances. It was the first promising lead. While forensics processed the room, Reed called in an artist to work with Collier on a composite sketch of John Smith. The result was a bland face with even features, the kind that could blend into any crowd. But it was something. The investigation intensified. The sketch was distributed to law enforcement agencies across 3 states. Traffic camera footage from the coastal highway was scrutinized. Sex offender registries were checked against the description. A week passed with no significant breakthroughs. The media began to lose interest as newer stories demanded attention. But in Bayshore, the Morgan children's disappearance remained an open wound. Reed maintained his routine of visiting Silver Beach each evening. On the 10th night, as he sat on a driftwood log watching the waves, he was approached by an elderly woman he didn't recognize. "You're the detective," she said. It wasn't a question. Reed nodded, studying her weathered face and alert eyes. "I'm Eloise Chambers. I live in that house." She pointed to a small cottage perched on the bluff overlooking the beach. "I've been watching you come here every night." "You've seen something," Reed guessed. "Not something. Someone." She sat beside him with surprising agility for her age. "The man in the newspapers. The one you're looking for." Reed's pulse quickened. "When?" "The day those poor children vanished. I was tending my garden, it faces the beach, you see. I noticed him because he stayed in one spot for so long, just watching. Most beachgoers move around, swim, play games. This man watched." "Did you see him approach the children?" Eloise shook her head. "No, I went inside to take my medication." When I came back, perhaps 30 minutes later, he was gone. But there was something else. Reed waited as Eloise gathered her thoughts. There was a van parked at the north end lot that day. Blue, I think, or maybe gray. Dusty. It had out-of-state plates. Did you happen to notice which state? Nevada, I believe. I used to live in Reno, so the desert colors caught my eye. Reed immediately called in the information. A blue or gray van with Nevada plates near Silver Beach on the day of the disappearance. It wasn't much, but in an investigation starved for leads, it was substantial. The next day, traffic camera footage from the coastal highway was reviewed again, this time specifically looking for vans matching the description. By evening, they had a hit. A gray Dodge van with Nevada plates had passed a camera in Seaside at 8:15 p.m. on the night of the disappearance, heading north. Further investigation revealed the van had been reported stolen in Las Vegas 2 weeks earlier. The owner, a contractor named Michael Reeves, had no connection to Oregon and no criminal record. Reed studied the grainy traffic camera image, trying to make out the driver's face. The quality was poor, but the figure behind the wheel appeared to match the general description they had been working with, a male with light-colored hair. "We need to find this van," Reed told the assembled team. "Highway patrol, neighboring counties, border crossings, everyone gets the details. This is our strongest lead." 3 days later, the van was discovered abandoned in a remote wooded area near the Canadian border. Forensics teams descended on the site, combing the vehicle and surrounding area for evidence. The preliminary report confirmed Reed's worst fears and rekindled his hopes simultaneously. Trace evidence indicated children had been in the van. A hair found on the back seat matched Emma Morgan's DNA. Fingerprints belonging to all 3 Morgan children were found on the interior door handles and windows. Most significantly, they found adult male fingerprints that didn't match the van's owner. When run through the database, they hit a match: Robert Allen Decker, age 36, with a record of nonviolent offenses in California and Nevada, including fraud and petty theft. His most recent address was listed as Las Vegas, but he hadn't been seen there in months. "This is him," Reed said, staring at Decker's DMV photo. The face was more defined than their composite sketch, but the resemblance was clear. "This is our guy." With a named suspect and physical evidence, the investigation gained renewed momentum. Decker's photo was released to the media. His known associates were interviewed. Financial records were scrutinized. A troubling pattern emerged. Decker had a history of assuming false identities and ingratiating himself with families in tourist areas. There were suggestions of inappropriate interest in children, though no formal charges had ever been filed. 2 weeks after the disappearance, Reed received a call that made his blood run cold. A child's shoe, confirmed to be Lily Morgan's, had been found by hikers in a state park 50 miles inland from Bayshore. The area had dense forests and numerous abandoned mining shafts, a nightmare scenario for a search. As resources were diverted to the new location, Reed couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The shoe was relatively clean and showed minimal wear for having been in the elements for 2 weeks. It seemed almost placed. "He's watching the investigation," Reed told Sarah as they drove to the state park. "He knows we're closing in, so he's trying to divert our attention. But why keep moving? Why not just finish it and disappear?" Sarah's voice broke slightly on the words. Reed had been asking himself the same question. Most child abductions ended within the first 24 hours, typically in the worst possible way. The fact that there had been movement and calculated actions weeks later suggested something else was at play. "I think he's keeping them alive," Reed said quietly. "I think this is more complicated than a typical predator case." The search of the state park yielded nothing beyond the shoe. No other traces of the children were found despite extensive efforts. Reed became convinced the shoe had been deliberately planted to mislead them. A month after the disappearance, the case took another unexpected turn. A motel owner in a small town near the Canadian border reported that a man matching Decker's description had stayed at his establishment 3 weeks earlier, with a woman and 3 children. A woman? Reed questioned sharply when the report crossed his desk. The witness statement was clear: a tall man with light hair, traveling with a dark-haired woman and 3 children who generally matched the Morgan siblings' descriptions. They had stayed 2 nights, paid cash, and the motel owner had noticed nothing particularly suspicious about their interactions. The children seemed calm, the report read. They called the man Uncle Rob and the woman Aunt Carol. No signs of distress were observed. Reed stared at the report, his mind racing. A woman accomplice changed the entire profile of the case. It might explain why the children had gone willingly, why they remained compliant. Children were typically taught to be wary of male strangers but might trust a couple, especially one that seemed to know details about their family. Sarah, we need to review all witness statements again. Anyone who mentioned seeing a woman near the children, even in passing. And check Decker's known associates for women named Carol or similar. As they delved deeper, the picture grew more complex. A waitress at a diner near the Canadian border recalled serving a family matching the description. The kids called the woman Aunt Carol, but I heard the man call her Diane when they thought no one was listening, she reported. The name Diane triggered a connection. Diane Mercer had been interviewed early in the investigation, a former resident of Bayshore who had moved away 5 years earlier but reportedly maintained connections in the community. At the time, she had provided a solid alibi for the day of the disappearance, claiming to be at her job in Seattle, 3 hours away. Reed ordered a review of Mercer's alibi and background. The results were illuminating. Diane Mercer had indeed worked at a Seattle law firm until 6 months before the disappearance, when she had resigned suddenly. Her current employment was unclear. More significantly, facial recognition software confirmed a strong resemblance between Diane Mercer and a woman captured on security footage at a gas station near the Canadian border, traveling with a man who matched Decker's description. She knew the town, knew the beach, possibly even knew the Morgan family, Reed theorized. This wasn't random. They targeted these specific children. The question of motive remained elusive. Neither Decker nor Mercer had any apparent connection to the Morgans. There had been no ransom demand. The children's identities hadn't been used for fraud. 45 days after the disappearance, Canadian authorities reported that a man and woman matching Decker and Mercer's descriptions had been spotted with 3 children at a remote cabin rental agency in British Columbia. By the time local police arrived, they had vanished again, but evidence suggested they had been there. A drawing signed Emma M. was found in the trash. The case had become an international investigation. Border security was enhanced, but Reed suspected they had crossed into Canada before the alert had been issued. As the 2-month mark approached, Mrs. Morgan made a tearful public appeal. "Please," she begged, looking directly into the cameras, "if you have our children, they need their home, their family. Whatever your reasons, please don't punish them. They're innocent." The plea generated new tips, but none led to concrete developments. Reed was wearing thin, the case consuming his every waking hour and haunting his brief periods of sleep. Then came the breakthrough they had been waiting for. A bank in Vancouver reported unusual activity on a dormant account belonging to a Sarah Mercer, Diane's sister, who had died 3 years earlier. Someone had accessed the account and made several substantial withdrawals. Canadian authorities placed the bank under surveillance. 3 days later, Diane Mercer entered the bank alone. She was apprehended without incident as she left the building. Reed flew to Vancouver that same day. By the time he arrived, Mercer had already been questioned for hours but had revealed nothing about the children's whereabouts or Decker's location. "Let me talk to her," Reed requested. In the sterile interrogation room, Diane Mercer looked smaller than her photographs suggested. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray, her eyes hollow with exhaustion or fear, Reed couldn't determine which. "The children," he said without preamble. "Are they alive?" Something flickered in Mercer's eyes. "Yes." "Where are they?" She remained silent, studying him with an intensity that was unnerving. Mrs. Morgan made a public plea, Reed said, sliding a transcript across the table. She just wants her children back. Whatever your grievance, it can't be with 3 innocent kids. Innocent, Mercer repeated, a bitter smile touching her lips. You don't know anything, detective. Then tell me. The story that emerged over the next hour left Reed reeling. Diane Mercer claimed that James Morgan, the children's father, was not who he appeared to be. According to her, 15 years earlier, under a different name, he had been involved in a securities fraud that had ruined dozens of lives, including her parents, who had lost everything and later died in poverty. Robert is my cousin, she explained. His parents lost their home, his father committed suicide. We've spent years tracking down the man responsible. When we finally found him, living this perfect life with his perfect family in Bayshore, we knew taking his money wouldn't be enough. He needed to know what it felt like to lose everything that mattered. Reed stared at her, disgust and disbelief warring on his face. So you kidnapped 3 innocent children to punish their father for something that happened before they were even born? We never hurt them, Mercer insisted, voice rising defensively. We treated them well. They think they're on an extended vacation with family friends. They don't know. They don't know they've been missing for 2 months. That their parents have been living in hell. That the entire country has been looking for them. Reed's control slipped, his voice echoing off the bare walls. Mercer flinched but didn't back down. James Morgan destroyed lives. He created false identities, stole millions, and walked away without consequences while others suffered. Where was justice for them? And now you'll face justice for what you've done, Reed countered. Where are the children? Where's Decker? For a moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she sighed, shoulders slumping in resignation. There's a cabin on Lake Wenatchee. About 3 hours east of here. Robert is with them there. Within the hour, a joint operation between Canadian and U.S. law enforcement was underway. Reed insisted on being part of the team that approached the cabin, a rustic structure set back from the shore of Lake Wenatchee, partially hidden by towering pines. The operation was meticulously planned to ensure the children's safety. As dusk fell, officers surrounded the property while Reed and Sarah approached the front door with 2 Canadian officers. The cabin appeared quiet, a thin wisp of smoke rising from the chimney. Through the windows, they could see a warm light and movement inside. Reed knocked, his heart pounding. Police. Open the door. Silence followed, then the sound of hurried movement. Reed nodded to the entry team, who quickly forced the door. Inside, they found Robert Decker attempting to flee through a back window. He was quickly apprehended, offering no resistance once he realized he was surrounded. The children, Reed demanded, gripping Decker's shirt. Where are they? Decker nodded toward a closed door. Bedroom. They're watching TV. Sarah was already moving. She opened the door to find Emma, Ben, and Lily Morgan sitting on a bed watching a cartoon, apparently unharmed. The children looked up in confusion as officers entered the room. Are you Emma? Sarah asked gently, approaching the oldest child. The girl nodded, her expression wary. Who are you? I'm Detective Palmer. We've been looking for you and your brother and sister for a very long time. Your mom and dad miss you very much. Emma's eyes widened. Mom and Dad know we're here. Uncle Rob said they sent us on a special trip while they fixed the house. The revelation struck Reed like a physical blow. The children truly had no idea they had been kidnapped, believing instead they were on some extended vacation arranged by their parents. The reunion between the Morgan children and their parents took place the following day at the Bayshore Police Department. Reed watched through his office window as the family embraced, tears flowing freely. James Morgan caught his eye over the heads of his children and nodded once, a gesture of profound gratitude that Reed returned solemnly. Later, after the Morgans had gone home to begin the long process of healing, Reed sat alone in his office reviewing the case file. Diane Mercer and Robert Decker would face multiple charges in both the US and Canada. The evidence against them was overwhelming. Yet questions lingered. Mercer's allegations against James Morgan remained uninvestigated. Was there truth to her claims of his hidden past, or was it merely a justification for an unconscionable act? Reed made a note to quietly look into the matter, though he wasn't sure what he would do with whatever he found. The Morgan children had been returned safely, a rarity in cases like these and the outcome he had scarcely dared to hope for. Yet the case had left its mark on him, as it had on the entire community. Bayshore would never again be the sleepy, trusting town it once was. Sarah appeared in his doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. "Thought you could use this." He accepted the cup gratefully. "The DA wants statements first thing tomorrow." "I figured." She sat across from him. "Think the kids will be okay?" Reed considered the question. The Morgan children had experienced a trauma unlike any other, yet they had been spared the worst possibilities. They hadn't been physically harmed or even aware of their predicament. The psychological impact, however, remained to be seen. "I hope so," he said finally. "Children are resilient, but something like this, it changes a family forever." They sat in companionable silence, the case file open between them. Outside, darkness fell over Bayshore as lights flickered on in homes along the coast, families settling in for the evening, doors now carefully locked, children accounted for. The Morgan case was officially closed, but its echoes would resonate for years to come. In solving one mystery, Reed found himself contemplating another, the complex interplay of justice, vengeance, and innocence that had brought them to this point. Sometimes, he reflected, the true mystery isn't what happened, but why, and where the blurred lines between right and wrong ultimately lead.